From every corner of the world, from the exotic lands of Mexico to Colombia, from the ancient civilizations of Peru and Chile to the mysterious terrains of Africa and Northern Europe, majestic structures emerge that challenge our understanding. These extraordinary works are impressive not only for their size, but also for their structural complexity. Surprisingly, despite the vast distances that separate them, these constructions share similar structural, ideological, and scientific elements. Is there then a hidden thread connecting these ancient cultures and their building techniques? Most likely, yes, and an answer might come from the quintessentially mysterious civilization, ancient Egypt. Here, we can find many clues leading to the discovery of a distant time when something extraordinary happened, something that seems concealed, hidden, and hard to accept. Before we dive into this new journey to the edges of knowledge, if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to the channel to support our work and not miss our new videos. In the vast theater of human history, there are still many dark scenes, unresolved questions patiently waiting for an answer. There are mysteries tied to prehistoric artifacts and monuments that stand as silent guardians of ancient construction knowledge. Think about the majestic walls of Cuzco, Machu Picchu, or Sacsayhuaman in the Peruvian mountains. How is it possible that these ancient civilizations achieved such grandiose works without the aid of advanced metal tools? How did they transport, erect, and fit massive stone blocks with such precision? An equally fascinating enigma emerges at Tiwanaku in Bolivia, near the majestic Lake Titicaca at an altitude of 12,631 feet. Here, there are the remains of an ancient civilization, and among its wonders stands the Gateway of the Sun, carved from a single monolithic rock weighing 40,000 pounds. This monument is one of the jewels of pre-Columbian civilizations. Not least is the Great Idol, a red sandstone colossus standing 26 feet tall, along with other colossi decorated with enigmatic symbols, revealing a surprising knowledge of astronomy, including an understanding of Earth's spherical nature. At Tiwanaku, archaeologists discovered a detailed calendar that tracks lunar positions for each day, taking into account Earth's coordinates. How is it possible that the inhabitants of this ancient city gained such deep scientific knowledge, especially considering their remote geographical location? These are just a few of the most mysterious places on our planet. The list could be much longer. Today, we'll try to shed light on this ancient mystery involving much of the ancient world, and to do so, we'll travel to Egypt in a remote and forgotten time.
We Greeks are, in fact, children compared to this people who have traditions 10 times older than ours. While none of our country's precious memories from the past would survive for long, Egypt has recorded and preserved the wisdom of ancient times forever.
This account from Herodotus is the result of his knowledge of ancient wisdom that he learned during his travels in Egypt. But his isn't the only testimony we have from ancient Greece. Other great thinkers like Diodorus, Eratosthenes, and Plato tell similar stories, and describe magnificent dynasties of deities that some see as immortal. Moreover, according to Plutarch, Plato stayed in Egypt for several years with the priests of Heliopolis, who initiated him into very ancient knowledge. We can add that, of course, historians often view these testimonies as myths, invented stories with no real value. This belief stems from a profound misunderstanding. In modern thought, the word myth has acquired a different meaning from that of the ancients. Today, we generally understand myth to mean fable or legend, but to the people of the past it held other meanings. The term mythos is Greek and means word, saying, or announcement, thus signifying a story or tale. To Hesiod, the ancient Greek poet, mythical tales were stories told in a way that could be indelibly imprinted on the human psyche, engaging both emotionally and intellectually. Our experience and the history of archaeology confirm this. For many years, for example, the city of Troy described in the Iliad was considered a mythical city, entirely invented by Homer. But in 1871, the adventurer and explorer Heinrich Schliemann, following the geographical clues in the Iliad, discovered Troy in western Turkey near the Dardanelles. This is just one example, and there would be many others. But let's return to Egypt and head to the west bank of the Nile, where we find the Temple of Edfu. The Temple of Edfu is dedicated to Horus, the falcon god born from the goddess Isis and the god Osiris. This is a relatively recent construction, dating back to the Ptolemaic period, between 237 and 57 BCE. But it was erected on the site of a much older temple, which would date back to the Old Kingdom period, between 2700 and 2200 BCE. However, the uniqueness of the Temple of Edfu does not lie in its antiquity, but in the inscriptions it contains. The inscriptions in the Temple of Edfu contain a series of extraordinary references to the first time, a period governed by gods before the advent of the pharaohs. This concept, regarded by many Egyptologists as mythical or legendary, might actually conceal deeper truths about the origin of this extraordinary civilization. According to what is described in these ancient inscriptions, a civilization of divine beings would have ruled the world before the emergence of Egypt's dynastic societies, bringing civilization to Egypt by teaching agriculture, astronomy, geometry, and other essential skills. After all, if we read the inscriptions found in the Temple of Edfu and elsewhere, there are many suspicions that suggest that the ancient Egyptians might not have been the authors of their knowledge, but rather inherited and passed it down over time. The construction of all sacred monuments seems to follow a plan and a building wisdom that appears to have been passed down from these ancient beings.
Do you not know, Asclepius, that Egypt is an image of heaven? There will come a time when it will have been in vain that the Egyptians honored the divine with sincere piety and service, and all our sacred worship will be useless and ineffective. The gods who travel through space will return from earth to heaven. Egypt will be abandoned, and the land that was once the home of religion will remain desolate, devoid of the presence of its deities. The fool will be considered a brave man, and the wicked will be esteemed as good. As for the soul and the belief that it is immortal by nature or can hope to achieve immortality, as I have taught you, all of this will be mocked, and they will even be persuaded that it is false.
Evidence of the existence of these primordial kings, who founded the ancient kingdom, can be found from various sources. For example, classical authors talk about them, and we also find them in the famous Turin Royal Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian document dated to the end of the 19th or beginning of the 20th dynasty, which lists the names of 10 primordial rulers of ancient Egypt. It is the Greek historian Eusebius who, citing Manetho, the priest of the Temple of Heliopolis and guardian of the sacred archives, sets the start of Egyptian civilization at 30,544 BCE, significantly earlier than the official chronology, with its origins attributed to primordial kings who ruled for a remarkable 13,900 years. But who were these deities or primordial kings who founded ancient Egyptian civilization? Where did their wisdom come from? Were they beings from another world, or were they the heirs of a lost, technologically advanced civilization? The inscriptions in the Temple of Edfu offer another important clue. The founding gods are said to have originated from an island. The native land of these primordial beings was located beyond the Mediterranean's boundaries. But due to a cataclysm, the island was destroyed in a very short time. Let's follow this clue. According to recent studies, between 12,000 and 13,000 years ago, a massive meteorite struck Earth, causing, with its impact, the shift of Earth's axis by a significant 1,000 miles. A true cataclysm that shook the entire planet. Violent earthquakes and terrible volcanic eruptions were followed by a rise in sea levels that flooded much of the planet's emerged land. This event is not new to those familiar with the mythological stories of almost all cultures worldwide. Even if some consider these just fantastical tales, let's imagine for a moment that an advanced civilization existed on our planet before this catastrophic event, and ask ourselves, are there clues supporting this narrative? Let's hear what Plato, who, let's remember, had been to Egypt and met with the priests who were the keepers of the wisdom of the primordial kings, had to say.
And now, friend Timaeus, forget the mythologies and listen to an ancient tale. You will find what is happening today and what has happened from long ago, which is worth knowing. In the territory we now call Atlantis, there were powerful kings who ruled over a vast and large island and many other nearby islands. Moreover, this island governed parts of the continent surrounding our true sea. Therefore, at that time, We had access to the entire world, as our sea was within the Pillars of Hercules, and one could say that what has now become a sea was then a true sea.
But Plato goes even further, describing a preceding era that he calls the Golden Age, a time when the god Saturn ruled as a benevolent shepherd.
In the Golden Age, long before humans built their cities, happiness reigned. Saturn did not allow any man to rule over others and cause injustice. The god used the same methods to govern us that we use with our flocks. You don't put a lamb or a ram in charge of a flock, but a shepherd, an entity of a different species, of superior nature.
Plato describes an era when the world was governed by superior deities, who entrusted minor gods or demigods incarnated in human bodies, with the task of educating humans and leading them to wisdom. These gods took on the role of the Good Shepherd, guiding humanity and dividing the earth, which gave rise to the divine dynasties. For those who follow our channel, this concept is not entirely new. We've encountered it in other parts of the world and in other cultures. But now let's return to Egypt and explore the figure of the god Thoth. Thoth is described as a divine being, born in a distant land, specifically an island located to the west of Egypt, and beyond what is now known as the Strait of Gibraltar. But there's more. Ancient texts tell that one day the sun darkened, so much so that it frightened the gods, who with Thoth's help, fled across the sea to a new land. At this point, we can't help but wonder if these gods who left the island were Atlanteans, perhaps due to a meteor shower that caused a massive catastrophe, destroying their nation, after which they found refuge in Egypt, a place where they might have previously established a protectorate, and that, for some reason, had been spared from the global catastrophe, or where the destructive effects were minor. Of course, there's no concrete proof that any of this is true, but even in this case, we can search for clues. As we've seen, the inscriptions in the Temple of Edfu mention a first time preceding the known dynasties, which, following this logic, could be called pre-flood, meaning before the global catastrophe that occurred 11,000 years ago. Are there clues suggesting that Egyptian civilization is that ancient? If we go to the Giza Plateau, we can make some significant observations. As we've seen in previous videos, the Great Pyramid is likely much older than Egyptology claims. But we also know that if we accept that a catastrophe occurred 11,000 years ago, the Great Pyramid must be later than that date, as it's perfectly aligned with the cardinal points, which wouldn't have been possible if it was built before, due to the shift in Earth's axis. But the pyramids are not the only interesting monuments on the Giza Plateau. There is at least one case that can prove beyond a doubt the antiquity of the site: the Sphinx. What we know, and this is confirmed by official Egyptology, is that the Sphinx is older than the Great Pyramid and was constructed in an earlier period. But by how many years can we backdate it? In the 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch extensively demonstrated that the Sphinx cannot be less than 10,000 years old. The signs of erosion on the statue's body clearly indicate that it was subjected to intense rainfall or flooding events that couldn't have occurred before 10,000 years ago. That is, before the Giza Plateau became an arid desert. Therefore, the Sphinx is undoubtedly older than commonly thought, and might even predate the catastrophe that occurred 11,000 years ago. There is another important detail to consider. In the Giza complex, there are what are considered foundational structures and preparatory works that are older than the pyramids. These structures are intriguing because, as we learn from the inscriptions in the temples, the ancient Egyptians followed a very precise construction plan. One designed by the deities, which they adhered to meticulously. This plan was so precise that it appears more like a reconstruction rather than the construction of something new. To support this theory, we can add that beneath the known structures in Egypt, there seem to be locations and rooms whose existence is suspected, yet for some reason, no thorough research has been conducted to explore them. We'll return to this topic soon with a new video, but to underscore the significance of what might still be hidden under the sands of Egypt, let's consider the case of the Labyrinth of Merid. Described by Herodotus as more majestic than the pyramids themselves, it was said to contain over 3,000 rooms. According to Greek authors, the underground rooms might hold the remains of the primordial kings and the original documents from which all Egyptian knowledge, and possibly more, originates. If we accept that there was an advanced civilization predating the ones we know, many pieces of the puzzle begin to fit into place. Discoveries like Göbekli Tepe and Gunung Padang no longer seem like inexplicable anomalies, nor do the ruins at Cuzco, Machu Picchu, or Tiwanaku. The narrative of divine beings incarnating as humans and becoming guides for humanity can be found in Egypt with Osiris, in Crete with Minos, who received the laws from Zeus, with Moses receiving the laws from Yahweh, and in Viracocha for the Inca civilization, to name a few. As we know, this list can be much longer. Are these ancient accounts merely myths and legends, products of ancient authors' imagination? Or do they suggest that our history might be much more complex than we ever dared to imagine? We are very curious to hear your opinion. Write in the comments what you think, and we'll return soon to discuss this further, because there's much more to say. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support our work. Until the next story.